In my previous life, on the day I married General Xiao Heng, my half-sister, when Liana knelt before me in public and begged, "Sister, you forced me to serve the general back then, and now I am carrying the general's child in my womb. Liana does not seek status. I only beg you, sister, to be merciful and allow Liana to enter the household together. Sister, the child is innocent. If you don't agree, you'll be forcing Liana to take her own life." The claim that I forced her to test the marriage is completely unfounded. I did not agree to Liana's request. Xiao Heng also did not raise any doubts. However, when Liana hired bandits to intercept my wedding sedan halfway and switch the brides, she was then impulsively raped and murdered by the bandits. After Liana's death, her biological mother, concubine Zheng, accused my mother of driving her to her death, my father, favoring the concubine, had my mother publicly beaten and confined to a manor, ignoring how concubine Zheng tormented my mother, which ultimately led to her tragic death. At that time, I had just become pregnant and begged my husband to help me seek justice for my mother. Yet Xiao Heng, who had always been gentle with me, had the servants beat the child out of my womb right before my mother's spirit tablet. If you had agreed to let Liana into the household back then, she and the child wouldn't have died. When Qingyang, you brought this upon yourself. That was when I realized Xiao Heng had long been secretly involved with Liana. Before my mother's coffin, both I and the child in my womb met our end, 2 lives lost. When I opened my eyes again, the celebratory firecrackers outside were deafening, and I was clad in a blood-red wedding dress. Before me knelt Liana, begging me publicly at my feet. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. Sister, that day you suspected the general of having an affair outside and forced me to test the marriage. Now I am carrying the general's child. If you do not agree to let Liana enter the household, Liana will have no face left to live. I can only dash myself to death right in front of your wedding sedan. Just like in my previous life, when Liana rushed out and spouted nonsense as I was about to leave, I don't seek any status. Liana would be perfectly content even just serving as a personal maid attending to you and the general. Though my father Wen Shuren only holds a third-rank official position, he manages the lucrative salt transport affairs, so most officials in the capital show him considerable respect. Add to that my imminent high-profile marriage to the general today. Our household is filled with numerous guests. All of them have now had their attention captured by this sudden, unexpected commotion. When Liana had inherited the theatrical talent of her mother, Aunt Zheng, and when she cried, it was like pear blossoms falling in the rain, utterly pitiful. Father frowned and glared at me angrily. When Qingyang, how dare you use your status as the legitimate daughter to force your sister to test the marriage? Usually, you and your mother bully Liana and her mother, and your aunt endures it herself, even persuading me to value family harmony and not hold it against you. I never thought that being lenient would lead you to commit such evil deeds. Is this how your mother usually teaches you? As she spoke, she cast a disgusted glance at my mother. A daughter's misdeeds are the mother's fault. All that scheming can't even get half a step onto the stage. The remark stirred a buzz of discussion among the guests. I heard that Lord Wen's official wife, Lady Zhong, comes from a merchant family. How can a woman who hasn't even read their admonitions for women manage a household properly, doting on the legitimate daughter while mistreating the illegitimate one? She has not a shred of the dignity befitting a proper wife and matriarch. It's true that mother comes from a merchant background, but if it weren't for her financial support that helped father pass the imperial examinations and become an official, and the real silver she spent paving his way for over 20 years, where would the Wen family be today? I know she has long been estranged from father, who dotes on his concubine and neglects his wife, and has endured it all only out of consideration for my upcoming marriage. In my past life, mother couldn't bear to see me being coerced on my wedding day and openly rebuked Aunt Zheng and her daughter. Afterwards, she was labeled as a jealous concubine who mistreated the stepdaughter, and was publicly caned by my father before being thrown into the estate. Aunt Zheng used snakes, insects, rats, and ants to gnaw at my mother's wounds every day, tormenting her to death. The horrific scene is still vivid before my eyes. Meeting again in this new life, I held back the sting in my eyes, grabbed my mother's hand to stop her from stepping forward, and signaled for her to stay calm. I stepped forward myself, steadying my voice. Why didn't you tell father and mother earlier that you want to enter the prince's mansion with me to serve him? Even if you haven't been coming to this courtyard to pay respects to mother for a long time and found it difficult to speak with her, father stays at the concubine's residence every day. How could you keep it from him as well? You chose to make a scene publicly on my wedding day of all days. Those who don't know better might think you're deliberately trying to ruin the Wen family's reputation. If you just want to enter the general's mansion together, I never said no. Who are you putting on this life and death act for? Let's not lose the dignity of our Wen family. Though my father came from humble origins, he valued reputation above all else. Unlike the sudden, unprepared confrontation in my previous life that made us a laughingstock, I responded with neither arrogance nor humility, making the underlying truth clear to everyone. To allow a concubine's daughter to be raised in her own mother's quarters, the principal wife must be quite magnanimous. Didn't you just hear? Lord Wen also spends every night in the concubine's chambers. In that case, the few times I've seen Lord Wen at banquets, he always seemed to be accompanied by this very concubine. Could it be that he favors the concubine over his wife? On her wedding day, she was threatened by her half-sister and scolded by her father. Yet Miss Wen shows not a hint of grievance. She doesn't seem like a spiteful person. It's the half-sister who lacks propriety. Amid the discussions, Father's face grew increasingly rigid. In my past life, concerned about keeping family matters private, my mother and I found it hard to speak out, and instead, they used public opinion to label us as jealous. Now, I have publicly torn off the Wen family's fig leaf. After all, I have no intention of keeping the Wen family in this lifetime. I looked at Wen Liana with a calm expression. If you wish to enter the general's residence, you can simply marry alongside me. Upon hearing this, Aunt Zheng behind my father thought I had softened my stance, and said with a laugh, "That's more like it. Although the young lady wronged my Liana first, she has now come to her senses after all. After Liana enters the household, you two shall still address each other as sisters, with no distinction between legitimate and illegitimate. No seniority or juniority, rely on each other, and your father and I will be at ease." When Liana also showed a pleased expression, but before her rising smile could settle, she heard me continue, "You may enter the mansion, but your status, let it be as you yourself suggested. Sister, become a bedchamber maid. Once you become a bedchamber maid, you won't even be considered a concubine-born young lady. Your status will be the same as that of a servant. And whether you are beaten or sold will be entirely up to the mistress." With that, I didn't give them a chance to react and immediately ordered my attendants. "Miss Liana is with child and cannot ride a horse, and by protocol, a concubine is not allowed to ride in a sedan chair. Hire a donkey cart and send Miss Liana to the side gate of the general's manor first." The streets were already crowded with people waiting to see the excitement of the general's manor's grand wedding. I deliberately used an uncovered donkey cart to have Wen Liana paraded through the streets to the side gate. Within half an hour, the commoners would spread the news of her status as a concubine throughout the entire city. When Liana's face turned pale with shock, "Why should I be the one to serve as a concubine? Wen Qingyang, we are both father's daughters. Why do you get to marry into the general's mansion while I have to serve as a concubine?" When Liana has been spoiled by Aunt Zheng since childhood, I always knew she couldn't bear such humiliation. She will surely reveal her true colors. I let out a cold laugh. "Didn't you say it yourself, sister, that you wouldn't ask for any status? Could it be that you're just saying all this to gain sympathy?" As I spoke, I gently squeezed Mother's hand. Mother immediately understood and assumed her role as the matriarch, as a concubine-born daughter. "You dare cause a scene at the legitimate daughter's wedding? This alone is enough to have you beaten to death. Qingyang is being magnanimous by not holding it against you and granting your request, yet you still don't know when to be satisfied. There is a distinction between legitimate and illegitimate children. This is the natural order of human relations, the rules set by our ancestors. Even if the master dotes on you, he won't break the rules for your sake." In my past life, my mother anxiously defended me, bluntly stating that my father was biased, but at this moment, Mother cleverly used ancestral ethics to silence father. Mother and daughter, united in heart, immediately intended to silence Wen Liana and take her away. In the chaos, when Liana, desperate to avoid capture, actually bolted out the door, she collided head-on with the wedding procession, and a sharp neigh of a reined-in horse echoed, with tears and snot streaming down her face. She clung tightly to Xiao Heng's leg. "General, save me. When Qingyang is forcing me to become his bed servant." In front of the commoners on the street, when Liana appeared even more pitiful than she had within the mansion, it was the same old story, and the commoners on the street all sympathized with her. By the time we came out, the people were already cursing my mother and me. Unlike in my previous life, Xiao Ci wasn't smiling. Instead, he frowned as he dismounted, looking at me with disgust. He said sharply, "When Qingyang, You drugged me, the general, with an aphrodisiac and forced Liana to come try on the wedding dress. Now Liana is pregnant, and you still want to force her to be a servant concubine. How could there be such a venomous woman like you in this world? In my past life, my mother died a tragic death. Xiao Heng coaxed me, saying he would seek justice with me, but at my mother's memorial, he had me and the child in my womb beaten to death with clubs. When I was on the verge of death, he looked at me just like this. I agreed to discuss marriage with you back then only because you once saved my life. Who would have known that you falsely claimed credit for the deed? You stole Liana's merit. Not content with stealing Liana's rightful position as the principal wife, you even caused the death of Liana and her child. Today I will let your mother's spirit witness how you pay with your life. I first met Xiao Heng because I had saved his life. A year ago, when plague broke out along the border, I went to treat patients having studied medicine since childhood, and happened to save Xiao Heng, who had fallen ill while leading troops in battle. Admiring his dedication to guarding the frontier for our country, I tended to him day and night for 3 days without rest, disregarding the risk of fatal infection. At that time, with the veil covering my face, he did not recognize my features. Only knowing I was the young lady of the Xiao residence, the first thing Xiao Heng did upon returning to the capital was to ask for my hand in marriage. Yet for some reason, he now believes the one who saved him was Wen Liana. Now he stands shielding Wen Liana behind him. This general was determined to marry Liana from the start. You stole the credit for Liana's rescue, and now you're pushing further to force her into being a concubine. If you insist on this, then I'm afraid this general cannot marry you, the legitimate daughter, either. It seems Xiao Heng has also been reborn. In my previous life, I stubbornly refused to let Wen Liana enter the household, but Xiao Heng, knowing there would be bandits disrupting the wedding later, didn't say much at the time. But now that he knew the mountain bandits would harm his beloved Liana, he naturally had to fight for his sweetheart. Today, either you and Liana enter the general's mansion together, or I will only marry Liana alone. But by then, the entire capital will know that you are a jealous woman who covets credit and forces her half-sister to test the marriage. No one will dare to propose to you anymore. This was a change that had never occurred in her previous life. Father, Aunt Zhang, and Wen Liana, each with their own hidden agendas, watched as I was driven to a dead end. Mother, not knowing how to defend me, was so anxious that her eyes filled with tears. You. How could all of you gang up to bully my Qingyang like this? You can't wrong my child like this. But who would believe it? Yet the weight of public opinion can crush a person, and I must clear my name and my mother's. I took a deep breath. The general wants to marry my half-sister, and when Qingyang dares not stand in the way. However, some matters still need to be clarified. When Liana, you keep saying that I forced you to try on the wedding dress. Do you have any witnesses? When Liana hid behind Xiao Heng, looking utterly pitiful, of course, my sister wouldn't let anyone know about such a disgraceful matter. Now you're demanding a witness. Are you trying to force your sister to her death? I curled the corner of my lips, my tone indifferent. No, you do have one. The fetus in your womb is the living proof. You claim to be with child, but would you dare to have a physician verify it with just your word? Xiao Heng was about to stop her, but when Liana, lacking any sense, had already agreed without thinking, before she could change her mind, I declared loudly, in the interest of fairness. The physician was randomly selected from a street-side pharmacy. I knew that watching a spectacle is human nature, and once the matter was laid out openly, it would no longer allow Xiao Heng to silence the crowd. Among the onlookers, there were some eager individuals who invited 4 or 5 physicians in a row. After repeated pulse diagnoses, all of them swore with certainty, I am indeed pregnant, almost 2 months along. When Liana couldn't see Xiao Heng's furrowed brow, only looking at me triumphantly. What else do you have to say for yourself, sister? But then she saw the corners of my mouth curl up as I whispered softly, When Liana, thank you for lending the child in your womb to prove my point. With that, I took out the marriage certificate and presented it publicly. The general gave me the marriage certificate a month ago, but when Liana's child is already nearly 2 months old, at that time, the marriage certificate had not been issued and the marriage was not yet settled. So how could there be any talk of a trial marriage, since you two have long held feelings for each other? And marriage between a man and a woman is a common affair. Why must you drag an innocent like me into this mess? I threw the marriage certificate in front of Xiao Heng. I, Wen Qingyang, would rather remain unmarried for life than submit to coercion. Our engagement is hereby called off. That day, I threw down the marriage certificate and immediately took my mother away with me. We didn't return to the Wen family. but instead went to a private residence in the capital that was under my mother's name. In this lifetime, I will never give Wen Shuan and concubine Zheng the chance to harm my mother again. My mother, unaware of the previous life, was full of confusion. I didn't know how to explain the concept of past and present lives to her, so I simply told her everything as if it were a dream. I thought I would need to elaborate further, but unexpectedly, she pulled me into a tight embrace. My Qingyang, you have suffered so much. Even if by any chance your dream comes true, I would not rest in peace even if I had to turn into a vengeful ghost to demand justice. But today you have offended your father and the Xiao family. I fear that from now on, truly as they said, no man in the capital would dare to propose to you. To be able to lean into my mother's embrace again in this new life, I am already content. But it was Xiao Heng and Wen Liana who did the wrong. Why should I be the one not to marry? I'd only make Xiao Heng think I'm hopelessly in love with him. Mother, I know someone who would definitely be willing to marry me. Leaning close to Mother's ear, I whispered a few words. Mother frowned and said, "Why is it him?" I stopped my mother from asking further questions and only urged her to rest for a few days to regain her energy. The Wen and Xiao families are bound to have restless days ahead. Just as I expected, first, when Liana didn't manage to marry into the Xiao family as she had hoped that day, Xiao Heng was loyal and righteous. But although he was the legitimate son of the general's household, the several illegitimate sons under the old general were all eyeing his position covetously. Moreover, the old general was aging, and the power and influence of the general's household had greatly declined compared to before. Xiao Heng's mother, being a princess, had always looked down on everyone. In my previous life, when my mother prepared dowry that filled several streets to be carried to the general's mansion, she still wore a displeased expression and constantly found fault with me after the marriage, acting like a demanding mother-in-law. Now, her precious only son was actually going to marry a concubine-born daughter, and without a substantial dowry, Xiao's mother was the first to object, pressuring my father to give an explanation. Either both daughters marry together, with the dowry doubled, or leave none at all. Xiao's mother refused to let Wen Liana enter the household, and when Liana was sent back to the Wen family, to appease her, Xiao Heng spread the story throughout the city that I had stolen her credit for saving a life. Liana, don't worry. Even if mother doesn't agree, I'll use my military achievements to request an imperial decree to marry you. Xiao Heng sent someone to deliver a message to me. Prepare double dowry in 7 days. Wen Qingyang, this is the final chance I'm giving you. Meanwhile, unable to withstand concubine Jing's persistent pestering, father first tried to send people to forcibly take me and mother away, but mother owned numerous residences in the capital, including some even father didn't know about. Later, my father became angry and said that if my mother did not bring me back soon, he would surely divorce her. Then I'll see how a divorced wife and a jilted woman manage to scrape by. I comforted my mother. Mother, just as you don't want me to jump into a pit of fire, your daughter also doesn't want to see you waste the rest of your life for my sake. A man like Wen Shuren, who dotes on his concubine and neglects his wife, is not worth you wasting your entire life on. Mother nodded. How could she not know? But such were the times. Life was difficult for women. Both my maternal grandparents had passed away. If it were truly just mother and me left, her wealth alone would be enough to attract the covetous eyes of villains. I just feel sorry for you. 3 days from now is your birthday banquet. Even for a child from an ordinary family, their birthday should be properly celebrated. But now, with all the rumors flying around, even if we were to host a banquet for the entire city, I'm afraid few would come. Mother's face was full of worry. But I wasn't the least bit concerned. Mother, we really should host a grand banquet. I want to invite a distinguished guest. Breaking from my low-profile stance of the past few days, I instructed the steward to hire a few gossipy women to spread the word along the streets. In just 3 short days, almost the entire city knew that I, Wen Qingyang, was going to host a banquet to celebrate my birthday, holding my mother's trembling hand. I secretly made a resolution. In this life, I will not only change my own fate but also rescue my mother from her suffering. On the day of my birthday, I took my mother to the front gate early to wait. The common folk along the street craned their necks to watch. Look, that's the rebellious daughter of the Wen family. She stole her half-sister's credit to climb the social ladder, got exposed, and still had the nerve to break off the engagement in public to save face. And now she's stubbornly throwing herself a banquet. Does she really expect people to attend out of respect for the Xiao and Wen families? I suppose she's using this as an excuse to have General Xiao come see her, just to save face for herself. Even the steward from her mother's household, seeing the wide-open gate and the empty entrance, Couldn't help but feel uneasy. Miss, should I tell the kitchen to prepare fewer tables of food? As soon as the steward finished speaking, several carriages rumbled to a stop in front of the mansion. Seeing the sign on the carriage, Mother nervously grabbed my hand. It was the Wen family. The first to step down were Wen Shiren and Aunt Zheng. Aunt Zheng was adorned with sparkling jewels, and her elaborate attire made her appear even more elegant than my mother, especially that golden flower hairpin on the head. Yesterday I sent someone back to the Wen family to fetch it, wanting to give it to my mother today. But it was intercepted by Aunt Zheng, who openly called my mother by her name in front of the servants. Zhong Rujin hasn't even been divorced by the master yet, and she already wants to secretly smuggle out the family wealth. Could it be that you've found some wild man outside to support you? Now standing beside Wen Shiren, putting on the airs of a proper wife, she curled her lips and spoke to me with sarcasm. I say, young lady, did you think someone would come to your banquet after leaving the master, making such a big fuss? You couldn't possibly think that those noble ladies in the capital who used to be friendly with you were looking at your face. When Shiren was accustomed to frowning at my mother and me. Nonsense. Two women actually trying to host a banquet like others, utterly disgraceful. His bull-like eyes glared at my mother. Hurry up and take this rebellious girl home. As the matriarch of the Wen family, instead of preparing dowries for your two daughters at home for such an important matter as their marriage, you're here slacking off and avoiding your duties. I think you've had enough of being the legitimate wife. After the daughters are married, you will immediately hand over the household keys to Channa and get out of the mansion to the estate. Don't stay here to be an eyesore. Auntie Zheng chimed in immediately. I don't mind working harder, but I can't imagine how my sister has managed the household all these years. Yesterday when I checked the storeroom, I found there's hardly any silver left in the mansion. Now both young ladies are to be married, and preparing double dowries is truly straining our resources. Liana is with child, and after entering the household she'll naturally become the mistress in charge as the mother of the heir, for the sake of our Wen family's reputation. I have no choice but to give Qingyan's dowry to Liana first, but don't worry, sister, I still have some personal savings. With 20 taels of silver, we can send our eldest young lady off to her marriage in grand style. When Shiren wanted my mother to hand over the household management authority to Aunt Zheng, but mother didn't get angry. Hearing that Aunt Zheng was eyeing my dowry, mother trembled with rage. My daughter's dowry was prepared by me, her mother. That is the wealth of my Zhong family. Why should it be transferred to your daughter? Her eyes filled with hatred as she glared at the two of them. When Shiren, I married you when I was 16. Back then you were just a scholar. It was my Zhong family who supported your studies and helped you through the imperial examinations. I have worked diligently in the Wen family for 20 years. And how have you treated me in return? Mother pointed at Aunt Zheng. That year I was pregnant with Qingyang, and in less than half a year you brought home that actress with her swollen belly. For my daughter's sake, I've swallowed all my bitterness and humiliation. You favor the concubine over the wife. Heaven will judge you for that, and I won't argue with you. You want that actress to manage the household, and I won't interfere. But if you dare try to take my daughter's dowry, absolutely not. Before mother could finish speaking, another carriage arrived. When Liana stepped down from the Xiao family's carriage and stood protectively in front of her mother, Madam, if you have anger, direct it at me. Don't bully my mother. Xiao Heng behind her seemed to be her confidence, speaking loudly to my mother. Zhongshe, I advise you to watch your words and actions. After I marry Liana, her mother will naturally be my mother-in-law. In the future, when Liana bears me a legitimate son for the general's manor, and I, the general, have achieved military merits, I will naturally request honorary titles for her and my mother-in-law before the emperor. As for you, coming from a merchant background and raising such a malicious daughter, if I were Lord Wen, I would have long sent you a letter of divorce and driven you out of the Wen family. I stood in front of my mother, facing Xiao Heng and his group directly. Today is my birthday, and I never sent you an invitation. Xiao Heng, for the sake of our acquaintance, I advise you to leave right now. Xiao Heng looked at me with a contemptuous tilt of his chin. When Qingyang, you deliberately spread the news all over the city. Isn't it just because you wanted me to come? Still stubbornly refusing to admit it even now. Today I want to see who else, besides us, would be so blind as to attend your banquet. As Xiao Heng's words fell, a woman's voice full of confidence sounded. I'll attend Wen Qingyan's banquet. Everyone craned their necks to get a better look, only to see a brilliant flash of bright yellow. Her Majesty the Empress has arrived. My heart swelled with joy, and I quickly pulled my mother down to kneel. Amidst the sea of people kneeling in unison, the Empress took me by the hand to help me up. then used both hands to assist my mother to her feet. Rujin, today is a family banquet, there's no need for formalities between us. The Empress looked me up and down with appreciation in her eyes. It's been many years since I last saw you, Yang has grown so much. I curtsied again. Qingyang pays respects to Auntie Empress, seeing how intimate the Empress was with me. Auntie Zheng, kneeling to the side, was so jealous her eyes turned green. She was so audacious as to crawl forward a few steps on her knees. Her Majesty the Queen has arrived. We have been remiss in not welcoming you properly. We have been remiss. When Aunt Zheng was an actress, she relied on her sweet talk to win favor from all sides. Later, after marrying Wen Shuren as a concubine, she was exceptionally favored. When attending banquets, others even addressed her as Madam Wen. A frog at the bottom of a well thinks it sees the entire sky. She actually thought the Empress was attending the banquet to give the Wen family face, a mere child's birthday, and to trouble Her Majesty the Empress with such concern. It must be that His Majesty, moved by my husband's daily diligence and knowing my daughter is to marry into the general's household, sent the Empress to offer her congratulations. But Your Majesty, this girl Qingyang is stubborn and doesn't know her place, please don't let her offend you. Aunt Zheng spoke and actually made to stand up, ignoring Wen Shuren's expression of extreme anxiety, pulling Wen Liana forward. This is our Liana, the future mistress of the general's household. Soon she'll be visiting the palace to pay her respects to you. Liana, why aren't you quickly greeting Her Majesty the Empress? When Liana inherited both her mother's talent for acting and her foolishness, seeing the Empress holding my hand, she also wanted to compete for attention in front of everyone. She put on a smile and spoke in a deliberately naive voice. Liana also greets Aunt Empress. Before the word and had even finished, her face was struck hard by the eunuch's slap. How dare you? What kind of lowly creature are you? How dare you claim kinship with Her Majesty the Empress? When Liana, who had never been touched by a single finger since childhood, covered her face and immediately burst into tears of grievance, she was immediately struck with several more slaps, the slap from Her Highness. How dare you cry? Do you feel that Her Highness has wronged you? When Liana still wanted to argue, but was immediately silenced by Xiao Heng, who covered her mouth and pulled her to kneel properly beside him. Your subject, Xiao Heng, thanks Her Highness the Empress for teaching my wife a lesson. Concubine Zheng didn't understand the situation and thought that the Empress was unaware of her and her daughter's status. You must have misunderstood, Your Highness. Aren't you here to attend the Wen family's banquet? Both Liana and I are members of the Wen family. Before she could finish speaking, she was grabbed by the guards on both sides and slapped several times, in the presence of Her Highness, who gave you permission to speak without authorization. Seeing that Aunt Zheng still wanted to speak, Wen Shuren quickly slapped her across the face. In the presence of Her Majesty, how dare a mere concubine like you speak? Only then did the Empress let out a cold snort. So Lord Wen does remember she is merely a concubine. I thought Lord Wen had already divorced his lawful wife and elevated this actress to the position of principal consort. Before the crowd, the Empress declared clearly, I have indeed come today to attend a family banquet. However, it is not the Wen family's banquet. I am here to join the feast of my sworn sister, Zhong Rujin. The Empress held my mother's hand. If it weren't for Qingyang sending me the message, how long would you have kept enduring this alone, you fool? In her youth, the Empress enjoyed traveling through mountains and rivers, and by chance became close friends with my mother. When I was young, I often visited the Empress's palace with my mother, but later, as my mother was unwilling to constantly trouble the Empress with my father's official matters, our visits gradually decreased. She simply told my father that she had fallen out of favor with Her Majesty. But in my previous life, after my mother and I passed away one after another, the Empress had secretly ordered an investigation. However, due to the lack of direct evidence, she was unable to clear our names, so after being reborn, I immediately took the jade pendant bestowed by the Empress back then and rushed to the palace overnight to request an audience. When Liana and Aunt Zheng thought they had the support of the Xiao and Wen families, but in the end, the world belongs to the royal family. Urged by Wen Shuren, Aunt Zheng quickly kowtowed and confessed her crime. Your Highness, forgive me. Your Highness may not know that my sister has a lazy disposition and is not skilled in managing household affairs. I have grown accustomed to sharing the burden for the mistress, which is why I momentarily overstepped my bounds. Even now, she still wants to trample on us, mother and daughter. The Empress looked at the golden hairpin in her hair. So this is the hard work you, a concubine, have been sharing. You've even taken the golden hairpin I gave to Rujin and shared it on your own head. I deliberately had someone fetch the gold hairpin, just for this moment. To give Her Majesty the Empress a reason to make a scene, the eunuch yanked the gold hairpin out, so forcefully that even Auntie Zheng's bun came loose. Auntie Zheng's eyes welled up with tears. She was about to put on a pitiful performance for the crowd, but before she could even draw a breath, the eunuch raised his hand to slap her, and she quickly swallowed her act in fright. The queen looked down disdainfully at Wen Shuren, who was kneeling on the ground trembling. I heard that Lord Wen always brings this concubine with him to banquets, favoring a concubine over the lawful wife to such an extent. If this were to reach His Majesty, I'm afraid even Lord Wen's official career would be affected. Wen Shuren immediately kowtowed repeatedly. Your Majesty is absolutely right. I was temporarily blinded by that lowly concubine and treated Rugine unfairly. I will bring my wife home now, and henceforth we shall treat each other with the utmost respect. Lifting his face, his eyes filled with plea, Rugine, we've been husband and wife for half a lifetime. What grievance could be so great that we cannot overcome it? Moreover, Qingyang has yet to enter the general's household. If her parents are at odds, she will also be looked down upon by her in-laws. Rugine, just come home with your husband, I immediately declared loudly. If my marriage must be bought with my mother enduring humiliation for the rest of her life, then Qingyang would rather never marry, and stay by my mother's side forever. The queen's face showed an approving look, and my mother also felt strength from my hand holding hers. Exactly, if I endure humiliation, it will only make Qingyang think that this is how a married couple should be. I don't want her to be like me, enduring again and again and wasting this life. Wen Shuren, I want a divorce from you. With the Empress presiding, Wen Shuren knew he was in the wrong and dared not argue further. He had no choice but to write the divorce agreement on the spot. When the noble ladies in the capital heard that even the Empress had attended my birthday banquet, they naturally rushed to join as well. The 20 tables originally prepared were not enough, so several more had to be hastily arranged. I know they came to the banquet out of respect for the Empress, but in this life, I have come to understand that if I can use their influence to my advantage, then everything can be turned to my benefit. It doesn't matter whose face they're saving, what matters is that I can achieve my desired goals. During the banquet, Xiao Heng watched me recite poetry with noble ladies, play arrow-throwing games, and solve riddles, and he couldn't help but stare in a daze. In my previous life, after marrying into the general's household, I was bound by their strict rules. Exhausted from dealing with my mother-in-law and worrying about my own mother, when did I ever have such a dazzling moment like this? He suddenly felt that after 2 lifetimes together, it seemed like he was truly seeing me for the first time. In contrast, when Liana beside him, being a daughter of a concubine, was ignored by everyone. She didn't even know the rhyme scheme when composing poems, nor was she skilled in entertainment, exuding an air of foolishness everywhere. Seeing so many people coming to celebrate my birthday, the jealousy in her eyes was almost overflowing. She tugged at Xiao Heng's sleeve. When my birthday comes, General, you must also hold a grand celebration for me. It has to be 100 times livelier than her Wen Qingyan's. Xiao Heng responded absent-mindedly, but when no one was paying attention, he stopped me in a secluded spot. Wen Qingyang, I've clearly seen everything you wanted me to see. You went through all this trouble just to make me recognize your value. Now I have seen it all. There are actually people in this world so shameless. I was left momentarily speechless, only able to sneer coldly. He actually thought he had guessed correctly. I know you've been scheming to steal Liana's credit just so you can marry into my general's mansion. That day, renouncing the marriage on the street was just a moment of anger. I went through the trouble of inviting Her Majesty the Empress to let you know that you are more capable of managing the household than Liana. As she spoke, she tried to take my hand. I understand all your intentions, and today I shall grant your wish. You entered the household together with Liana, and though you are both equal wives in name, I will persuade Mother in the future to entrust the household management to you. After marriage, when attending banquets, I will not be like your father. I will treat both you and Liana fairly, ensuring neither of you is neglected. These words had already made me sick to my stomach. I took 2 steps back and said sternly, General Xiao, although I don't know what you mean by stealing credit every time you mention it, I made it perfectly clear that day. Our engagement is off, General. Please maintain your dignity and cease your pestering. Xiao Heng furrowed his brows. Wen Qingyang, there's no one around now. How long are you going to keep up this act? You're merely the daughter of a third-rank official. Being able to marry into my general's manor was a blessing you accumulated over several lifetimes. Now that your mother has separated from your father, who would choose you as their principal wife, you and Liana are sisters. What's wrong with having 2 queens like a Huang and Nuying in the future? Oh, I see. You're jealous that I had intimate relations with Liana first and feel I've treated you unfairly. As he pressed forward step by step, he even attempted to make improper advances. Since today happens to be your birthday, why don't I make it up to you as a birthday gift right now, Tilda? His breath sprayed on my face, making me feel nauseated. The moment he drew closer, I whispered softly, Xiao Heng. Are you sure there's no one here? I accidentally pushed open the door behind me, revealing a room full of noble ladies from the capital. Among them was even Xiao Heng's mother. I deliberately brought my mother to the entrance to respectfully welcome the Empress. The close friendship between the Empress and my mother, like sisters from childhood, need not be mentioned by me. It naturally reached the ears of the various noble ladies. The lucrative position of a third-rank salt transport commissioner, compared to being the Empress of the Central Kingdom, everyone could weigh for themselves which carried more weight. I deliberately led Xiao Heng here, and fortunately, he lived up to expectations. At this moment, I was weeping like a pear blossom bathed in rain and quickly hid behind the Empress and my mother. Qingyang intended to pay respects to the ladies, but who would have thought General Xiao actually, this time? Without the Empress needing to say much, the ladies had already spoken up for justice, each of them sneering and ridiculing Xiao's mother. The princess truly knows how to raise her son well. The young lady was unwilling, yet you tried to force the issue. Is bullying men and dominating women the rule of the general's residence? As a general, instead of focusing on protecting the country, you're thinking about two women serving one husband. You're neglecting your duties and letting down His Majesty. The princess, who had always been unwilling to bow her head in front of others, now turned pale in the face of the sarcastic remarks. She stood up and slapped Xiao Heng across the face. Ungrateful wretch, a few cups of wine and you've lost your mind. Hurry up and apologize to Miss Wen. In my previous life, when I married into the general's household, Mother Xiao often used her status as a mother-in-law to oppress me, but now, I am not her daughter-in-law from the general's household, and she can no longer make me suffer any grievances. Even though Xiao Heng was filled with unwillingness, he had no choice but to grit his teeth, lower his head, and bow. Please forgive me, Miss Wen, it was my recklessness. I forgot the young lady hasn't yet crossed the threshold. Lady Xiao, unwilling to lose too much face before the crowd, had no choice but to grit her teeth and find a way to save face for herself. Unfilial son. Come back with me at once to prepare the betrothal gifts, so we can properly and grandly welcome Miss Wen into our family on the wedding day. When there's any misunderstanding, you two can always close the door and sort it out between yourselves. This made all the ladies cover their mouths and chuckle. As the mother and son were boarding the carriage, when Liana, who had already endured enough disdainful looks in the courtyard, tried to follow them onto the carriage. However, Lady Xiao, who was already in a foul mood, sharply rebuffed her. Miss Liana, you and my son are not yet married. How dare you ride in and out together in the carriage of my general's mansion? A bastard child raised by a concubine has no sense of propriety. When Liana's eyes welled up with tears, but Xiao Heng dared not defy his mother and could only persuade her to wait patiently for another 2 days. When Liana wanted to send someone to the Wen family to deliver a message and arrange for a carriage to pick her up, but she arrogantly ordered the servants, "Are you all blind? I am the second young lady of the Wen family. Prepare the carriage for me at once." "But this is my mother's courtyard," the servant retorted with neither softness nor harshness. "My lady has already divorced Master Wen. This courtyard now bears the surname Zhong. My lady has only one daughter, Miss Qingyang. Where did this so-called second young lady come from? If Miss Wen wants to flaunt her authority, go back to the Wen family to do it." A group of noble ladies eagerly watched the commotion. A mere concubine-born daughter dares to put on airs in the main wife's courtyard after the divorce. She truly doesn't know her place. She was already pregnant before even entering the household. How shameless. Amid the jeers, when Liana walked all the way back to the Wen family, weeping as she carried her swollen belly, and on my end, the banquet didn't conclude until sunset. At night, my mother and I set off together in the Empress's carriage. The Empress grasped my hand. "Qingyang, is it true that you said you can cure Xingzhou's leg?" The seventh son of His Majesty Jiyu Xingzhou, the only legitimate son of the Empress. A year ago, he was injured in battle and became paralyzed. He is also the one I wish to marry in this lifetime. That day in the palace, the Empress held my hand. "Ever since you said that even if you never marry in this life, you would never be forced into it, I always knew you were a good child. If you can heal Xingzhou's leg this time and are willing to marry him, I, as the Empress Dowager, will overcome all obstacles for you. But if you cannot heal him, then let it be as if this matter never happened." I will adopt you as my goddaughter. With this as protection, you need not fear those beasts causing you trouble. When I first went to see the Empress with the token, I proposed the idea of treating the seventh prince's leg. I beg your majesty to grant Qingyang one request, whether it succeeds or not. Qingyang wishes to marry the seventh prince. My mother was moved to tears, but I smiled and comforted them both. Even if it doesn't succeed, would marrying the seventh prince and becoming a leisurely princess really be beneath the dignity of a daughter from a third-rank official's family? Before the seventh prince became paralyzed, he was originally the crown prince candidate. Such a good marriage would never have fallen to me no matter what. Now that he's paralyzed, he's naturally no longer in the running for the throne, and those top aristocratic families are no longer going to great lengths to push their daughters into his household. But I'm different. With my mother divorced, I must find myself a backer who can suppress both the Xiao and Wen families. Only then would I have the chance to avenge the grievances my mother and I suffered in our previous life. Moreover, I have known Jiyu Xingzhou since childhood, and I know he is a gentleman. As a prince, he still fights for the country, and I respect him as a hero. And in my previous life, after I died, I was buried with my mother on a desolate mountain, forgotten by all. Only he, upon hearing the news, dragged his crippled leg step by painful step to my grave and placed a few pieces of Osmanthus cake before it. In this lifetime, even if he were a cripple needing lifelong care, I would accept it. For several days in a row, I stayed in the palace to perform acupuncture treatments, completely ignoring the rampant rumors outside. After Wen Shuren separated from his mother, unable to withstand Zheng Yinyang's persistent pleas, he elevated her to the status of his wife. When Liana, with her belly proudly protruding, flaunted everywhere the news that she was about to marry into the general's manor, and Xiao Heng truly used his only military merits to exchange for the emperor's decree, securing a marriage contract to wed the legitimate daughter of the Wen family. He even specially sent people to deliver the betrothal gifts and wedding attire. By the emperor's decree, Wen Qingyang has no choice but to marry me, otherwise it would be the grave crime of defying the imperial order, punishable by death. And I was indeed preparing for a grand wedding, with the wedding dress my mother embroidered stitch by stitch for me. The dowry stretched from the doorstep all the way down several streets, twice as much as the last time. It drew envious glances from passers-by, yet they curled their lips in disdain. No matter how wealthy the Zhong family is, they're still just using it to marry their daughter into the general's mansion. When the sun rose, the scene in front of the Xiao residence was bustling with activity. Xiao Heng, dressed in red wedding attire, sat steadily at the entrance. He said that for the sake of fairness, both Wen Liana and I should come to the Xiao residence and enter together. Before long, a bridal sedan chair indeed arrived at the door. Miss Wen Liana of the Wen family has arrived. People craned their necks to look behind Wen Liana, expecting to see the grand procession of a lavish dowry, only to find 2 carriages and a few pitifully small chests. Lady Xiao immediately furrowed her brows and questioned the Wen family's steward. Your master promised the dowry would be doubled. How can there be only this little? Is he marrying off a daughter or sending off a beggar? The steward looked utterly embarrassed. After my mother separated from the Wen family, she took all her dowry with her. It was only then that Auntie Zheng realized the Wen family was nothing but an empty shell. This dowry was only scraped together by Aunt Zheng turning everything upside down just to save face. Xiao Heng quickly comforted his mother. Liana has been of great help to me. Besides, she is with child, so why fuss over the amount of the dowry? Anyway, there's Wen Qingyang. Didn't the commoners just gossip that her dowry is twice as much as last time? Mother, please calm down. We'll surely regain our dignity in a moment. But the Xiao family waited and waited, until it was almost past the auspicious time for the bride to enter, and still my bridal sedan chair was nowhere to be seen. Xiao Heng couldn't hold back any longer and finally sent someone to investigate. A moment later, the servant rushed back in a panic, stumbling and falling at the door. General, something terrible has happened. The bridal sedan chair carrying the Wen family's young lady has been carried off to another place. Ignoring Wen Liana's pleas as she stepped out of the sedan, Xiao Heng mounted his horse. I promised you would both enter the manor together. How could I go back on my word? He rode his horse all the way in pursuit and finally intercepted my bridal sedan halfway. He lashed his whip at the lead servant. Fool, don't you even know where the general's residence is? Where are you taking my wife? He said to me in the sedan chair in a clear voice. Qingyang, don't worry, I promised that you and Liana would enter the mansion together, and I will definitely make it happen. I am taking you home right now. As soon as he finished speaking, The sound of hooves and rolling wheels could be heard not far away. "General Xiao, how bold of you! How dare you even think of snatching my bride?" The bright yellow sedan chair landed, and when the curtain was lifted, it was Jiyu Xingzhou. Jiyu Xingzhou was 2 years younger than Xiao Heng, but back when Xiao Heng was sent by his mother to be a study companion for the prince, he was inferior to Jiyu Xingzhou in every way. If it weren't for Jiyu Xingzhou accidentally injuring himself, Xiao Heng might not even have had the chance to go to the battlefield and earn merits. Although Xiao Heng was displeased, he still dismounted and knelt to pay his respects. "Today is my joyous occasion. What does the 7th prince mean by this?" Jiyu Xingzhou curled his lips and gently waved his folding fan. "What a coincidence. Today is also my joyous occasion. I wish to marry the daughter of my late mother's close friend, Miss Qingyang. I wonder who General Xiao intends to marry." Upon hearing my name, Xiao Heng was greatly astonished. "How is this possible? His Majesty has already issued an edict, granting my marriage to the legitimate daughter of the Wen family. How could Wen Qingyang marry 2 husbands?" I heard it clearly inside the bridal sedan and declared loudly, "General Xiao himself said it. What His Majesty promised you was the legitimate daughter of the Wen family. But I was expelled from the Wen family registry a few days ago, when Shuren has elevated his concubine to wife. And now the legitimate daughter of the Wen family, Wen Liana, is waiting for you right at your mansion gate. Isn't she?" At that moment, when Liana rushed over and threw herself into Xiao Heng's arms, "General, I am now the legitimate daughter of the Wen family, and that Wen Qingyang isn't even considered a daughter of the Wen family, she's just a merchant's daughter. How could she possibly be worthy of entering the mansion gate alongside me?" The legitimate young lady, Xiao Heng, looking utterly disheartened, pushed the person away and staggered a few steps to my sedan chair. How could you marry someone else, Wen Qingyang? Just because you're angry with me, you're treating your own marriage as a joke." He lowered his voice and said, "Do you know that Jiyu Xingzhou is a cripple?" Before he could finish, I stepped out of the sedan chair and slapped Xiao Heng across the face. "Xiao Heng, as a subject, how dare you speak recklessly about a prince? This slap is for your disrespect." Xiao Heng looked utterly astonished, and I quickly followed up with another slap. "This slap is for you gossiping about my husband." After 2 slaps, Xiao Heng was dazed and disoriented, collapsing to the ground. The next moment, his eyes widened in shock. He actually saw Jiyu Xingzhou rising from the sedan chair, each step he took seeming to shatter all of Xiao Heng's illusions. I must thank General Xiao for being blind. Allowing this prince the chance to find such an excellent wife. Not only is her character straightforward and decisive, but her medical skills are also superb, having actually cured this prince's leg. Jiyu Xingzhou walked to my side, looking down arrogantly at Xiao Heng. "Xiao Heng, as a subject, how dare you cause trouble at this prince's wedding, just because I've been paralyzed for a year? Do you think you can climb over my head?" Jiyu Xingzhou tossed down 2 pills. "I've heard that the Miss Wen whom General Xiao is going to marry is also skilled in medicine, and she even saved General Xiao's life. Now, I shall grant you, the couple, another opportunity to prove your love is as strong as gold. Here are 2 pills, one is poisonous, the other is harmless. I ask you, Miss Wen, to feed one to him. Let's see if she can save your life once more." Xiao Heng stared at the 2 pills, knowing he had no right to refuse. He could only cast a pleading glance at Wen Liana. "Liana, my life is entirely in your hands now. Come and see which one is non-toxic." When Liana looked at the 2 identical pills handed to her, her face turning pale with fear, large beads of sweat rolled down her forehead, and her voice trembled uncontrollably. This medicine is too difficult. I can't tell." Xiao Heng's face instantly turned ashen, but Jiyu Xingzhou snorted with a laugh, and with a glance, the guard beside him stepped forward, casually snatched a pill, and swallowed it. Amidst Wen Liana's screams, the guard laughed and said, "Thank you, 7th Prince, for the reward of the big hawthorn pills." I said steadily, "Wen Liana, these 2 pills are not poison at all, it's just the most ordinary 2 hawthorn pills. You claim it was you who saved Xiao Heng that day, but you don't know the slightest bit about medicine. How could you have saved him?" Wen Liana still wanted to argue that she had been too nervous to tell the difference, but Xiao Heng, who was lightly sniffing the other pill, already felt his heart sink into despair. "Qingyang, it was you." He placed that hawthorn berry pill into his mouth, chewing it to pieces along with his tears. "It was you who saved me back then. Back in the military camp, the medicine was bitter, so to ease the bitterness, I made large hawthorn berry pills myself. I would give him one each time after he took his medicine." If it really was Wen Liana, how could she not even recognize her own work? Xiao Heng seemed to have gone mad. beating his chest and hanging his head in despair. I was wrong, I was so wrong. Qing Yang, why didn't you tell me sooner? Why do you keep watching me make the same mistakes over and over again? Even now, Xiao Heng still has the habit of shifting the blame for his own mistakes onto others. In my previous life, on my deathbed, I told him that it was I who saved him. But he simply refused to believe it, and now he blames me for not telling him sooner. Xiao Heng still wanted to stop Jiyu Xingzhou and me, but Jiyu Xingzhou kicked him in the chest. Causing him to vomit a mouthful of blood, Jiyu Xingzhou scooped me up into his arms. Darling, both of our mothers are waiting at home, I'm here to take you home. Jiyu Xingzhou also brought my mother to the prince's residence. He didn't covet my dowry and even doubled the betrothal gifts. All of these are for my wife. There was even a blank imperial decree from the Empress Dowager. This is from my mother to you, in case one day I truly do something that wrongs you, my wife. You may use this imperial decree to take everything from me. I had a grand wedding with Jiyu Xingzhou, while the Xiao residence was also bustling with activity. Xiao Heng intended to break off the engagement with Wen Liana, but the imperial decree had already been issued. If he defied it, the entire general's manor would suffer the consequences. With no other choice, he had to let Wen Liana enter the household, but only as a maidservant without formal status. On the day Jiyu Xingzhou and I brought my mother back to her maiden home, we heard quite a bit of commotion along the streets. Concubine Zheng, unable to become the general's mother-in-law, made a fuss again, urging Wen Shuren to find a way to bring Wen Liana back. I don't care, Liana is your daughter, how can she be just a chambermaid? Go and tell the general's house to grant Liana a divorce. This time, when Shuren did not indulge her any longer, he directly ordered people to restrain her, administered a family punishment by beating, and then sent her off to the estate. It's all the disaster you raised, it's all because of you, you vixen. You've destroyed my family and ruined my life. However, before concubine Zheng could be sent to the estate, she was thrown into prison, together with Wen Shuren, without his mother's dowry. Wen Shuren, who had long been accustomed to lavish spending, found himself in dire financial straits. To maintain his former dignity, he had no choice but to embezzle funds. Meanwhile, I had Jiyu Xingzhou send someone to secretly investigate and gather evidence in advance. With a single memorial of impeachment, Wen Shuren was sentenced to immediate execution, while concubine Zheng was exiled to the frontier to serve as a military prostitute. Upon hearing the news, Wen Liana, who was at the general's manor, knelt and begged Xiao Heng to help save her mother. But ever since my grand wedding, Xiao Heng has been busy trying to clear things up with me. After being driven away several times by Jiyu Xingzhou's men, he became disheartened. Spending his days drowning in alcohol and chasing after women, he had no mood to care about her. When Liana foolishly tried to use the child in her womb as a threat, but Xiao's mother directly sent her a miscarriage potion one night. Getting rid of that lump of flesh, the legitimate wife hasn't even been married yet. How can we let a maid give birth to an illegitimate child first? Xiao's mother was still looking everywhere to find a proper wife for Xiao Heng, but on my birthday, which lady in the entire capital didn't know of Xiao Heng's character? With a mother-in-law like Lady Xiao, no one wanted to marry their daughter into that family. After marriage, Jiyu Xingzhou and I were deeply in love, and I soon became pregnant. What none of us expected was that upon learning of my pregnancy, Xiao Heng actually started a rebellion. However, his few troops were utterly defeated by Jiyu Xingzhou in less than half a day. Not only was he himself implicated, but the entire Xiao family was also punished, some were executed, while others were conscripted into the army. When Wen Liana saw her mother again, they met in a military brothel. On the day Xiao Heng was executed, he roared, "Qingyang, you must wait for me, in this new life. I will surely win you back." When Jiyu Xingzhou told me this, he kept shaking his head. "My lady, do you believe in past lives and present fate?" I was basking in the sun in the courtyard, gently stroking my swollen belly. Even if there were, such scum doesn't deserve another chance. Jiyu Xingzhou planted a kiss by my lips. Naturally, in this life, the next life, and for all eternity, I would never give him the opportunity to steal my wife away. Not far away, mother called us for the meal. And Jiyu Xingzhou's face instantly flushed with embarrassment. It made me laugh uncontrollably. Whether Xiao Heng can be reborn again, I do not know, but I know, no matter how many times he is reborn, I will make sure he gets the punishment he deserves.